Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Certification course. Everyone in the auditorium can be seated. And those of you that are coming in, welcome. Welcome all of you that are watching online throughout many parts of the world. I know you send messages in and we see that you're watching and we thank you. We always look forward to your communication and all the feedback that you can give us. So, welcome, hello, hola, shalom. To all of those watching, I know there's a Etese. I know you're in Ghana. I get many messages from you also, or we get many messages from you. We'd like to welcome all of you. And the thing that we really rejoice in is that the Peaceful Solution truly transcends all religions, cultures. Diversity within the Peaceful Solution, of course, is very simplistic in everyone has value. And of course, as we're going to continue in what we've been speaking about in this class so far, and this book, which is the fourth of course, 5 in the junior high series, we started with the character unit. We went through the acceptance unit, on into the self-control, and now we're in the second chapter. Catan started the second chapter of the respect unit. And of course, it's about respect and how everyone deserves respect. And respect can be a very complicated thing to understand. You think it's very simplistic. People sometimes tend to think that if someone talks nice to me, thank you. If someone talks nice to me, that means they were respectful. So when someone goes up to a child in the park that's not theirs and they're looking to steal it and they offer that nice little ice cream to that child and you're such a great little guy, I've been watching you for hours. What a great little boy you are. And then off they go and kidnap the child. Well, was that respectful? Of course not. Remember, personality can be very deceptive when it comes to seeing what the character of a person really is. And of course, now, obviously, if somebody's yelling and throwing things at you, that's pretty obvious. That's disrespectful. But there's many things that can actually be that way that doesn't look that way on the surface. If someone tells you that you can commit an act that is scientifically proven will destroy your life and kill you, that's being very disrespectful if you tell people they can do things that bring them harm. Remember the very basics of the Peaceful Solution and that dividing line of morality we talked about on page 8 of the character unit about what divides between what is right and what is wrong. And of course, those rules of morality is not to do anything that would bring harm to yourself, someone else, or the environment. And that ties in very much so. And you'll want to put that in your notes to always go back and rehearse, pages 6 through 9, really, of the character unit, just to begin with. And we'll get into some other things tonight, because when you look at self-respect, you have to understand what the rules are. And of course, self-respect, it's also known as self-love in some countries. I know they like to use that term instead, self-love. But we call it self-respect. And of course, respect, because respect must be given. And yes, even to ourselves. And if you're not putting in the effort to respect yourself, you won't respect anyone else. And it's very important that we see these things and comprehend these things, because that's truly how peace grows from inward outwardly. That doesn't mean we won't see ourselves making mistakes or bad choices, but we have to learn from them. And of course, it's like we've said before, if you hit your hand with a hammer, it hurts. You don't want to do that twice. Well, consider if you're hitting someone else's hand with a hammer. You probably wouldn't want to do that either, especially if you have to exchange and you have to hold the nail for a little bit and let them use the hammer. That looks a little differently when it works that way. Well, if you'll turn your pages over to LP2A, this is where Catan left off in the respect unit. And of course, it's entitled Chapter 2, Respect for Myself. And Catan covered this section. I just want to go back and reread the first paragraph. And it says, someone once said, if we are able to achieve real peace in the world, we shall have to begin with our children. For many reasons, true peace does not exist within our world today. And think about it for a moment. Why would we need to start with our children? Why not start with the ones that are waging the wars? Why not start with the ones that are destroying society? They say it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Well, the Peaceful Solution has proven not that we're dogs, but has proven that we can learn things at any age. But if we were to start today with our children in a curricula, which the Peaceful Solution has developed, and it was to be instituted into school curricula, for those of us that are older, for us to get true peace into our lives, there's a lot of war we got to get out of our minds. There's a lot of bad choices, bad education, bad representation that's been given to us and put within our minds that we have thought is correct. But as we go through life, we see that it doesn't really work that way. And one is that you have to earn someone's respect. Now that has proven, and if you haven't had it proven to yourself, you will see that it will be proven to be true that everyone, everybody, everything deserves respect, whether alive or dead, as we've covered so far. But if we were to start with our children and eliminate the negativity that is being put into their minds, teach them the positive things, you can actually control, remember, through conformity, through peer pressure. You can actually, and I'm talking positive peer pressure, not the negative where you're threatening to do something, the old threat that I'll beat you halfway to death if you don't do what I say. Now, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about through positive peer pressure and conformity into education, means of education that teaches someone how to make a right decision. Experience, as we'll learn in the responsibility unit when we get there, is not the best way to learn. You don't want to have to contract a disease. You don't want to have to, for example, you don't want to have to lose a couple fingers using a saw before you realize this saw is pretty dangerous. I should probably be careful with it. If you've got to lose a couple fingers before you realize there's some rules that govern that and you need to adhere to it, that's a sign you shouldn't be around the saw to begin with. But in society, you can't really tell someone, well, you don't know the rules to society, so you really shouldn't be around society to begin with. It doesn't work that way. These are rules that we have to implement. First, you have to teach. You can't implement a rule that hasn't been taught. And once the rule is taught, then we can implement it, but showing people how it's a benefit. Showing people how freely keeping these rules benefit everyone. And if we could grasp as a society on a global scale, that teaching our children how to make right and proper choices, not influencing them with the things that you see on social media or the things that come across the TV to where, they hit me, I've got to hit them back harder. That's the mindset that's put across in these video games that are put out to where you're rewarded for raping women, shooting people, killing as many people as you can. And then we wonder, another mass shooting in California today comes around in the headlines. And we sit back and we think, why is this taking place? Society can only become what we teach it to be. We are a makeup of people that were taught things. And as we went through the self-control unit, it can be done in very, kind of subliminal ways, as we talked about with the drink and the screen that was flashed in the movie theater. Well, just for a second was it flashed, and a lot of people got up and they felt thirsty and they went and bought that particular drink. Well, we're not talking about the flash of a second. If that's so powerful in the mind of someone, a flash of a second, then what can hours, unlimited hours of shooting and killing people playing video games, what can that do? Human nature, as we'll talk about tonight, mankind, we tend to want something that's, a little bit more intense. You get that first part and then it becomes dull. It's got to be more intense. And then it's got to be more intense. And eventually that intensity leads from killing someone in virtual reality to wonder what it'd be like in real life. And if you think those things don't take place, you should really listen to what people have said that they've interviewed that are in prison for manslaughter, homicide, murder. They're just people that'll tell you, I don't really know why I did it. I just did it. I don't really know why, but I did it. Now, there's a lot of people that know why they did it, and they did it intentionally. And there's a lot of people that will tell you, I was just mad just for a split second. I lost it. I knew a man for many years who told me how when he got caught in a situation where he took someone's life. He said, you know, it was probably only 3 seconds I set my mind I was going to do it, and that's all it took, was those 3 seconds. And as soon as I did it, I regretted it, and I've regretted it for the rest of my life. Now, when you think about that, how long does it take for someone to go into a Walmart, which is pretty popular, to be shot up? Not specifying just Walmarts. But what does it take for someone to go into a store or into society to shoot up, to kill, to take the lives of others who they've never met? Well, the first thing it's missing is self-respect. They have no respect for themselves. And why do they have no respect for themselves? They were never taught to respect themselves. And people can say, you know, this is just common sense. Everybody knows this. Then why is it not being used? And why is it not being taught? That's the greater question. If it's so common sense, then why are we not teaching this? You're not born knowing how to walk and talk. Why do we assume that you're born knowing how to behave morally? Well, we're not. But continuing on here at the very top of LP2A, it says, for many reasons, true peace does not exist within our world today. Our children are suffering, and as parents and educators, we suffer with them. We cannot be there to protect our children at all times. So we need to instill in them a sense of worth, a sense of value. And we'll get into talking about values again tonight, but they have to have this sense of, as we talked about in the character unit on page 118, 117, 118, 119, actually put them all together, where we talk about you give someone hope. You give someone the foresight of what they can be, letting them know that there's many things you can do. By doing so, we can give them the skills to make moral, respectful choices to cope in a disrespectful society. And there's no doubt that we see disrespect in society. War is a form of disrespect. And if you look at how much money is spent on war, there is an enormous amount of money spent on being disrespectful. And I had someone one time in an ROTC class that said, war is not disrespectful. So I asked him, I said, well, explain to me how this is respect. We take a bomb. We go to, I think I used Afghanistan. We drop a bomb in the middle of a city, and there's one person that we're looking for that we say is guilty of a crime, and we kill 30 or 40 civilians in that city. How is that showing respect? And then well, that can be disrespectful. Well, usually in war, there's a lot of people die that have nothing to do with war. It's not like the guilty people die. And who's deciding they're guilty? Who's deeming them to be guilty? Well, once again, sometimes it's everybody wants to get the upper hand on the other person. And if we train our children in these things, the wars will become more intense, as we've done through the years. The wars become more intense. The video games have now been tied into the wars to where you can fly drones and bomb them from the comforts of your own little game chair on the base. Instead of going overseas or putting yourself in danger, now you can just kill and destroy without ever leaving the comforts of the base you're stationed at. Well, is that a form of disrespect? The Peaceful Solution says it is. Why? Because it brings harm to someone else and the environment, and also it eventually brings harm to themselves. You know, it's kind of like, if you watch what we're doing tonight, someone asked if the Peaceful Solution supported climate change and supported saving the environment. And this class is one representation that I gave. We do an enormous amount of classes using the internet. We have meetings using the internet. We're not a group of people that will fly many leaders over to a place called Davos and have unlimited personal jets and commercial planes to have a meeting that everyone could have readily had just through the internet. So the carbon footprint that people talk about, think of what they create trying to get rid of the carbon footprint. Well, it's the same thing with Peaceful Solution. You can't create war and try to achieve peace. That's very counterproductive. You know, it's like trying to paint your house white, but you're still using black paint. You're never going to get there. You're going to be at the very opposite end of the spectrum. But that's what we see in society today. And it truly does seem like insanity. Well, looking down at the very bottom here, not all the way to the bottom, but you see the 3 bullet points that Catan read through. You'll see up above it, it says, for some students, this may be the first time they receive any information how to develop respect for themselves. And you can see that when we used to go into the schools before the COVID come out, you would see posters in the school, respect. You have to give it to get it. You have to earn respect. And every school that we went to, by the time we left, those posters came down. Now, those posters were published by a well-known character education program that really probably didn't think things through completely. And, of course, if they had them, I'm sure they would have readily have changed them. But we've seen them up in every school, and the things that everybody wanted us to come talk about was respect, because the students are being disrespectful to the teachers. If you have a poster that's telling the students the teacher has to earn your respect, you're going to have a really hard time getting students to respect teachers, because students will have teachers jumping through hoops. And at the same time, you have teachers going, no, those students have to earn my respect. Well, who's keeping score? Who tallies up when someone's done enough? The insanity behind it never ends. But you see here, it says the basic groundwork that is necessary for success in life. And these are the topics we're going to be covering in this section. It says the power of optimistic thinking, which sometimes is easier said than done. The importance of having positive internal language. This is going to talk about self-talk. And specific skills for replacing negative self-talk. So if you turn over, we're going to start today's lesson plan, respect for myself. Then, of course, we always start our lesson plans out. Chapter 2 will always be a review of Chapter 1, but Chapter 1 is always a review of the previous book that you would have read. So here we get into Chapter 2, and we're going to look back. And the first procedure here, well, let's go up to the very top for those of you that might be joining for the first time. Every chapter starts out with a purpose and objective. And it says students will learn what self-respect is and how to respect themselves. They will also learn that a lack of self-respect can leave them vulnerable to risky behavior. And if you don't remember what risky behavior is, you can go all the way back to the very first part of the character unit in the introduction, and it tells you about those really bad scenes where you have the unwanted teenage pregnancies, which leads to an enormous amount of abortion. And of course, then you also have the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. You also have drugs, which you hear constantly about methamphetamines. You hear about so many things coming across. Of course, they're saying coming across the southern border between the United States and Mexico, and then they get into blaming China for the methamphetamines that are coming up this way. They talk about the enormous amount of deaths it's bringing. But if you notice, nobody's really accomplished anything in stopping it. We all talk about it, but what are we doing to stop it? That's really the question. And that takes effort and it takes work. So continuing on here, of course, it shows you that you'll have your teacher's manual audio lessons. If you have the book that we send out PDF, they're embedded into the book. Otherwise, you see here we've graduated to a CD player. It used to be cassette tape. You can get them in MP3s. If you're a teacher and you don't have them, if you'll just send a request to info@peacefulsolution.org, or you can request them on the Facebook page that you're watching, the official Peaceful Solution, we will gladly email those to you, and you'll have the audio files in MP4. And then, of course, student handbooks, and that's for your students. But you as a teacher, you need your teacher's manual. Well, here in the very first procedure, it says, review with students the previous lesson, the value of respect, by asking the following questions. And of course, the very first question is, who deserves to be shown respect? And you're wanting to get back from them what they've gotten. And this is where you're going to kind of evaluate to make sure you've had some enrichment activities. You've just covered what I have learned for Chapter 1. And now you're going to ask them, what did they get? And you don't want to put your words in their mouth. You really want to use an evaluation of seeing how well things went to see if they can tell you what they learned. And of course, if you turn back over to, well, let's go to page 1 first. That's the very first page where you had the note to the student. On page 1, it says, does everyone deserve respect? the answer to this question is a resounding yes. So yes, everyone deserves respect. It doesn't say you have to earn someone's respect. Everyone deserves respect. In fact, not only do people deserve respect, but so does everything within our environment, regardless of whether it is as small as a pencil or as large as a tree. Which, if you think about it, where does a pencil come from? A very large tree. Whether it's alive or dead, and we talked about that in detail. What does that mean, alive or dead? Well, there's rules and guidelines, and remember, even respecting the dead is honoring, as you see last wills and testaments. You bury them properly. You don't take, as they used to do in the Old West, when someone died, the first thing you did was take everything they had. That's still stealing, It belongs to someone. But notice whether it is a dead or alive, yours or someone else's, respect must be shown. And as we talked about before, every time you see that word must, it's very important to realize that's an essential ingredient to accomplishing the goal. When it says we must do something, it's very essential to accomplishing what is needed to be done to receive the benefit of the rule we're trying to apply. And also looking down to, still on page 1, notice there's a purpose to it all. And it says, this leads us to why learning about respect as part of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program is so important. Many people do not think about respect until someone disrespects them or their belongings. Even a thief, as I've learned, and so have the other ones that we went into prisons and teaching, and one thing we learned, that people that were in there for stealing did not like to be stolen from. They detested it. And it was kind of interesting seeing how people who were in prison for stealing did not like to be stolen from. In fact, one person said that he would be willing to take a life of someone else if they stole his stuff. I was like, that's interesting. And then later in the conversation, well, what are you in prison for anyway? Oh, grand theft. Well, okay. So you're willing to kill for what you yourself did. If we operated underneath your rule, you realize we wouldn't be having this conversation. You would be dead. And whether you get through to people or not, well, the point of the peaceful solution is to be thought-provoking. And that's what teachers are really trying to do to children. That's what we do to each other as adults. We're trying to be thought-provoking, putting these thoughts into our minds so we can change the way we act, because every action begins with a thought. And then, of course, we can move forward with these thought-provoking comments. We can also cause a lot of damage when we don't use morality in the application of our comments. But continuing on here, it says, but as you will learn, yes, learn, this is a skill that we're going to have to nurture, we're going to have to develop. It says, respect is a quality that we should be constantly aware of. This unit will help you understand how developing respect as a character trait can enable you to have regard for your health and well-being, as well as compassion for others. You will also learn about the importance of respect in our society and for our environment. So look at everything we just covered here, the environment, society. Remember what society is that we covered in the character unit. That's a group of people that are governed by a body of rules. And of course, if they honor those rules and they keep those rules, that's a form of respect. If they break those rules, you take a gun in somewhere and shoot somebody, you give somebody's child drugs, I don't care how nice you're talking to somebody when you shoot them, that's still disrespectful. Or how much you're building up, I know you're down, I know you need this, here, take this will make you feel better. Where did you get that? Oh, I bought it from the dealer down the street. What a guy, what a great guy, how respectful he was, right? Well, no, it's disrespectful, it's very disrespectful to do someone that way. A lot of poison can have a lot of sugar on top. And sometimes, as authority corrects us, teaches us, remember, correction is supposed to be teaching. That's what correction is supposed to be, pointing out where we messed up and then tell us how we can fix it. If you just point out where we messed up, that doesn't help very much at all. That can lead to a lot of negative self-talk, as we'll get into, and also be very detrimental to self-respect. But of course, the answers you're going to get, looking back over to LP2C, all people deserve respect. And you can get that off of page 1. That's where we first covered it. But as here you have question D, it's sprinkled all throughout chapter 1. How does showing respect to others improve the quality of a relationship? Well, of course, we just read there's a purpose to it all, and that kind of talked about it. But you can go through all of chapter 1. And notice here the italicized answer, it says, answers will vary, but might include respectful interactions bring kindness, honesty, and care to relationships. And of course, these are essential ingredients to having. And if you notice kindness and honesty, there you have a personality trait with a character trait. And you put those together. Well, would you rather have someone kind and dishonest? Which would you rather have? Someone who is kind and dishonest, or someone who is kind of to the point but honest with you? I had a teacher in the Peaceful Solution who was very to the point and was very honest with me, and I appreciated that very much, and I still do to this day. And the lessons that he instructed me in, and many other teachers he instructed, we value very much so. But also, there was a lot of pointing out how to do things better in a way of kindness also. I'm not saying someone put our fingers, down on the table and smacked them with rulers. That's not what I'm saying. But when you're going the wrong direction, we'll measure this. And when I say measure it, sometimes you have to get attention of people. If someone's walking out in front of a car and you go, hey, sir, the car's going to hit you, sir. That's not going to help anybody. Sometimes you got to go, hey, look, you're getting ready to get hit. You got to shout a little bit. Now, is that disrespectful? Well, we'll learn as we go. But now if you're yelling, hey, you blank, 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 or you that blank, 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 yes, of course, that's a very different way of doing it. And it's not a very positive way of doing it. And I'm not saying that you should be yelling and screaming at people either. I'm saying to take all of this in. And of course, what is the outcome of the action to begin with? What is the intention of the outcome of the action? Well, here in procedure 2, it says inform students. Now, this is a procedure of discussion. Inform students that in this lesson, they will learn about the importance of having self-respect. Ask students to explain in their own words. So once again, you're wanting to hear back from them. You're evaluating your class. You're listening to what they have to say. And hopefully by now, they're bringing things in from the character unit they've learned, the acceptance unit they learned, the self-control unit they learned things in, and then tying it along with chapter 1 of the respect unit. That's what you're really looking for, and that's what you're wanting to hear. And you'll know that this puzzle, the pieces of this puzzle, is starting to come together. And if you don't hear the things that you've taught, you just got to go back in and help those pieces get to the right place. If you've got a large class, you're not going to get everyone there the first time. The second time, possibly the third or fourth time. The goal is to get everyone there, no matter how long it takes. Because we do have to live with the outcome of our decisions. And if we give up on someone in the middle, then we pretty much give it up on everything. You don't know who that person, who can choose or decide, or who can foretell the next person that's going to walk into a public place and shoot someone. It's not there to tell. You'll know it once it takes place, but what were the ingredients that led to that? And could it have been changed? That's what we're looking at. Well, notice here it says, now we're talking about self-respect. It says, take as many answers as time permits. Tell students that self-respect is the care and concern we show to ourselves. Ask students to brainstorm ways we show self-respect. Now, of course, once again, you're getting that from them. You haven't even got into the chapter yet. You've talked about respect and how everyone deserves respect, but now we're going to be talking about how it begins with yourself. Notice this says answers will vary, but should include practicing proper hygiene. That's something that everyone wants to do. I tell you, you want to see conformity in a classroom. I can guarantee you, we've done this more times than I can count, and it's one of the most humorous things. I can guarantee you, when you go into a classroom, there's at least somebody that was in a rush and didn't brush their teeth that morning. But when you ask, okay, who here brushed their teeth this morning? Every hand's going up in that classroom, whether they did or not. They're going to say they did it because no one wants to, not me, I didn't brush mine. Why? Because, well, that's kind of nasty. You're supposed to brush your teeth, especially when you're coming out in public. Nobody wants to, smell what you brought with you or what you had last night for lunch. But you'll see everyone. I have not yet, and we've taught 1 million+ students. I still haven't met the first person that didn't brush their teeth that morning. I'm sure a lot of people didn't, but I haven't met them yet. But of course, the proper hygiene, the dressing appropriately. Well, what is dressing appropriately? We'll get into that more. We talked about that in the acceptance unit, but we'll get into it more. It's about covering yourself, not drawing attention to certain parts of your body, not advertising yourself and then wondering, why did guys do this to me? Or why did this occur to me? Why did that take place? You don't want to be a walking billboard. And then, of course, avoiding risky behavior. And, of course, getting a proper education. Well, what's a proper education? Well, not everybody's going to be a mathematician, a rocket scientist, a nuclear physicist, a brain surgeon. Not everybody's going to do that, but everybody has to live within the society, and everybody has to deal with these rules of morality. So a proper education for all of us would be dealing and learning what these rules of morality are, and the implications of them, and how to apply them, and what occurs if we break them, what occurs if we just ignore them. And can you ignore them? That's a question you should put to your class. Can you ignore the rules of morality? Well, sure you can. Look out in society. It's being done every day. It's being done in Ukraine. It's being done in Afghanistan. It's being done in Iraq. It's being done in southern Sudan. It's being done in Somalia. You can name endless places. Everywhere. It's being done. Yes, these rules are being ignored. Well, what's the result of ignoring the rules of morality? War, destruction, disrespect, death. That's the result of the ignoring of these rules. Doesn't mean we're going to get them all in one day, but we didn't mess it all up in one night either. But get this from them, have discussion with them, hear what they have to say, and then notice, list their responses on the board. And as the lesson progresses, note the similarities between their answers and the text. So this is something you want to write on a board, and you want to leave it up there. Even if sometimes we use a poster board, and we kind of pin it to the wall. Because in our classrooms, the board we have, it's always being used for a lot of stuff. So we'll put this usually on a poster board, pin it to the wall so it can stay there, and then we'll put another blank one beside of it, and we'll add what the text says as compared to what our students said in the very beginning. You're not expecting them to be right. It's great if they are, but you're not expecting that before you cover the lesson. You're wanting to see how much they learn and how much they take in as the lesson goes. Now, looking here to procedure 3, it says, tell students that one of the most fundamental ways we can demonstrate self-respect is to value our lives and not take them for granted. Now, if we could put up the first slide, once again, this is a perfect time to remind them of values. And I'll tell you one thing that I was taught from the very beginning when I started learning this program was the value of remembering where things were at and what book they were in. We've come a long way now since we have PDF searches and other things that help us with this. But in the beginning, you had 5 books you hauled around with you everywhere, and sometimes it wasn't too easy to remember where everything was at. You used to think, and I know William and Catan and David have all, if you've ever seen their books, they lay them over here for the camera to show you something. We learned from the very beginning, a lot of notes ends up not working out too well because you start flipping your book in every direction because you got so much stuff written in your book. Not saying you shouldn't take notes, but it can be a hindrance sometimes. But once again, value. And here on page 6 of the character unit, this is where this is from. It says values are what you believe in. So this is something that you believe in this. And so you found it to be right or feel strongly about. This means that you're compelled to do it. There's something pulling you to go this way. It's a conscience is what society would call it. And they also play a key role in, notice, developing your character, the skill, even of self-respect. It has to be developed. It's only developed if you value it, if we value it. If we have no value for it, we're not going to continue to move forward. It's kind of like, I see these advertisements on the news every day about a certain type of treadmill. And the thing that they really advertise our treadmill, 98% people are using them after the first year. Why? Because most people buy them, they use them for a week or two, and it's like, I'm done with that. And it becomes a clothesline, or they throw their clothes on them. Well, they valued their health, but not to the point where they had to do anything, right? And I'm not saying a treadmill is going to solve all your problems, but that's also the way it goes in our character and developing our character and actually getting the negative things out. If we don't value it, we might be all gung-ho at the very beginning, like as Catan talked about, everybody's, they make these New Year's resolutions. I'm going to lose weight. And it seems like a great idea January 1st, but by January the 4th, it was like, oh, what a horrible 3 days. Nobody should spend the year like this. And it's back to the old, let's do what we do. But notice the sum total of everything you value becomes your value system. And we all have a value system. And when we get into the advanced character unit, known as the Building Moral Excellence unit, we'll rank our values. And you'll find out that we can have 20 different things to rank, and you can have 20 different students in your classroom, and they're going to rank their values 20 different ways, and that's okay. Because there's some things that might be more important to you than to someone else. And you might say, well, how's that so? Well, if you live at home with both your parents, and you have the ideal family situation, and you always have food, you always have heat in the winter, your house is cool in the summer, you have the very basic necessities. Well, to you, that's dropping to the bottom. I already got that. Well, how do you think the person feels that doesn't have heat in the winter? That's going to be up pretty high. That's something I'd like to have, or even have a jacket or a pair of shoes when it's cold. That ranks very differently. So as society, and it's not saying that anyone's wrong. If I didn't have heat and it was 10 degrees outside, I'd rank that very high as something I want. Air conditioning would not be important to me at that time. It's amazing how we rank our values, and in the summertime, we want our house as cold as possible. In the wintertime, we want it as hot as possible. And we pay a lot of money to do both of them, and you think about, sometimes you think, well, we are an insane group of people. I spent all summer trying to get my house this cold. Now I'm trying to get it warm again. But these are the things we go through. But continuing on with these value system, it says the things they care about and consider as important are for the most part the same thing you care about. Of course, as you interact with people other than your parents, you will adopt other values as well. The things your friends value, values of your school, values of people that you meet in your community. If you travel to other countries, you will learn to start valuing things. I've been through that myself, where you value things that you never even considered, but you value them. I've talked to countries recently that they're having enormous riots right now in their city. And the city is a city of 11 million people down in Lima, Peru. And you can see off their balcony, they showed me the video, you can see the riots, the fires, everything going on. And I thought, man, I would not want to live. A city of 11 million people for me is too big to begin with. But then you have 10 to 20,000 people rioting in the city. No, I wouldn't want to be there, But the people I'm talking to, a couple of people, they don't want to be there either. But they're there. They're refugees. They're from Venezuela to begin with. That's not where they live. They went there because it was like that in Venezuela. So they're searching for a better life. But if the morals are not there, no matter where you go, you're going to have war. And I know when we say that as Americans, people look at us like, man, who are you guys to talk about peace and war? Well, and we agree. We all need to work better. We all need to change. We all need to do more to make society a better place. But once again, this value system we're talking about here, and we're talking about, of course, going back, and I'll read to you one more time, that we're going to demonstrate how self-respect is to value our lives and not to take them for granted. And that starts getting the risk-taking behaviors that we've covered, the drugs, the social media intake, the influence and innuendos we covered in the self-control unit that come through us in every direction. We're bombarded by these influences, and they're positive and negative every day. Peer pressure and conformity is a very powerful thing. And we were reminded to set our minds in advance in the character unit on page 80, and to never underestimate on page 60 of the character unit. It told us to never underestimate the power of an influence and what it can cause us to do. Well, we're going to have students turn to page 25 of their handbook and read the introduction. Ask students to share some of the things they enjoy in life. Now, answers might vary, but can be, being outdoors, spending time with family and friends, learning, helping others, reading, and eating. That's one of my biggest ones there. So going over here to page 25. And of course, family and friends and all of these things go together. But, one thing in life that you see and you learn is why should you value these things every day? Why should you value the things that you have every day? Why? Because there's no guarantee they'll be here tomorrow. I remember growing up and having a cousin who was just a year younger than me, and his father was my mother's brother. And of course, he was her older brother. By the time he was 13, his mom and dad had both died. One died of a brain aneurysm right in the middle of a kitchen. The other one died of a massive heart attack just like 14 months later. So within 2 months, or within 18 months, 14 months, right around in there, he went from having 2 parents to no parents very quickly at 13 years of age. Now, that was very traumatic on him. And I actually haven't spoken with him, probably since I was 16 years old. We went very different directions in life after that. But you think about how quick life changed for him, and I've seen it change for other people. You know, when you have your parents, I've seen people that they're 60 years old and both their parents are still alive. That's a very different life than someone who loses their parents very young. Some people lose their father young. Some people lose their mother young. You know, I never had an experience that I can recall with my grandfathers. One died when I was very young, barely walking, and one died 10 years before I was born. You know, so when I hear people talk about their grandfathers, I always listen because I think, well, that's an experience that I've never experienced. Don't really know, what that's like. But one day you never know. You know, I grew up with 2 brothers, and my first child was a girl. And I remember thinking, it's not supposed to be this way. I've never had sisters, so I don't know how this is supposed to work out. No, it don't work that way. But you know what? You don't get to choose. And yes, I said that. You don't get to choose what gender your child is. They're born with a gender. That's part of self-respect we will get into as we move forward. But here on the very top of page 25, it says, I am part of the human race. I belong to the most intelligent life form on the planet. I am special and unique, and I am worthy of respect. Now, we are supposed to be the most intelligent life form on the planet. But I want to show you the next slide, and this is to go back, just to put back in your mind once again. This was from page 31 of the acceptance unit. And remember what it says right here at the very top. I am part of the human race. Well, here on page 31 of the acceptance unit that we covered, it said, did you read that? There's only one race. Not so different after all. The world's population is estimated at 6 billion. Well, now we're at 8 billion. So 8 billion people in only one race, sharing 99.9% of the same genes. We are not so different after all, with only 0.1% of our genes accounting for our physical differences. Should our focus be on the variations in the color of our skin or the slant of our eyes? You know, when you think about that, should we really determine the value of a person by how white or how dark or how brown or how yellow? Should that really determine the value of a person? Whether their eyes are slanted or whether they're nice and rounded, the accent of the sound that comes out of their mouth, should that really determine the value of a person? Well, we see in society that it does. And we've programmed that in society. Remember, hate is something that must be taught. A child is not born hating. You have to teach a child to hate. And if you teach it to hate, it will hate very well. And whenever the child goes in and shoots up or kills or maims or murders, it's only done when it was taught to do. And you did your job well, because now you see the result of harming someone else or the environment. Notice here it says, what is important is that 0.1% that accounts for our differences and has led to hatred and violence are the 99% of the similarities. So what is more important? The 1%, the 0.1% that is different, or the 99.9% of our similarities? You know, and I think about this a lot when I see people coming across our southern border. I still don't see Canadians coming across the northern border, so you don't really have many examples there. And it's, people talk about the Mexicans are crossing the border. There's not very many Mexicans crossing the border. I know. I go down there a lot. And there's Nicaraguans and El Salvadorians and Venezuelans and Colombians and Peruvians. And there's a plethora of Latin Americans. Very few Mexicans are crossing the border because they know they're just going to get sent back. The other ones, well, Mexico don't want you to send back Colombians. It's not our responsibility. They were just passerby there, and we just kind of let them go. But when you start seeing how it's amazing how a border of a country, whether it be Iraq or Iran, or Saudi Arabia and Yemen, where Yemen is an extremely poor country. Saudi Arabia is an extremely wealthy country. And the only thing that determines whether you're part of that or not is that fine line, that border. And I had someone teach me this that was not very familiar with the peaceful solution when I was speaking to someone in South America, and they were talking about the United States. They'd never been, never really seen much about it. And they made the comment, you should be thankful that you were born there. You don't have to try to cross the border to get in. I never really thought about it, and then I think about all the people I deal with in Africa that they battle to get visas. Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica. Europe is a little bit easier. Latin America is very difficult. These people that desire to get visas just to come learn here at the headquarters of the Peaceful Solution. That's the only reason they're really trying to come, is they want to learn these basic rules of morality so they can take them back to their country. And it's extremely difficult to get that done. But when you think about how we're really classified by where we were born. I pick with William all the time, who was born in Alaska. And I tell him he's the closest thing to a Russian I've ever met. Because if he was just born 150 years ago, he would have been Russian. But now that we do a land agreement, now you're an American. And that's one example of how things change very quickly. Whenever the United States, and we'll say what it was, when they stole northern Mexico, wow, now they're Americans. They were Mexicans and now you're Americans. Why? Well, because we just stole your land. Or as they say down in Mexico, the robar. They stole it. They took it. Now, if that can change the citizenship of a person, obviously borders do not determine the value of a person. When you can buy land from Russia, that's called Alaska, and now those citizens go from Russians to Americans. So, you think of the mindset of what's being put out in the United States concerning other countries and the hatred toward other people. Why? And why do we allow it? Well, finishing the slide here, it says it also means appreciating the various nationalities and ethnicities. Instead of finding reasons to alienate each other, let's focus on the similarities that we share. And one similarity that we share is we all have to live on this world. Whether you like it or not, you can't send somebody to the moon because you don't like them. Even though there's sometimes a battle to get to the moon, it seems like, it doesn't work out very well. Well, continuing on here, chapter 2, Respect for Myself, the introduction. The greatest thing you can value is life. So remember, to deem important. The greatest thing you can deem important is life. Notice it says when you value your own life, you have respect for yourself. Now, respecting yourself, you would think, well, that's the easiest thing to do. Well, when someone uses drugs, are they respecting themselves? No. When someone partakes of risk-taking behavior and opens themselves up to many different diseases, are they respecting themselves? No, absolutely not. When someone lies to someone else to gain the upper hand, we see this take place in society on an everyday basis, even with world leaders. Is that showing respect? No, it's kind of like where, one person has classified papers and it's like, oh, can't believe that man did that. And now it seems like everybody has classified papers. And now, well, okay, it wasn't as bad as we thought. Now it doesn't seem too bad. And you even have people going, well, how did that get there? I didn't even have the rank or permission to take those. Well, you're not helping yourself. It'd probably be better if you just remain silent, because the more you talk, the worse it sounds. But these are the things that we see in society. Here we see having respect will enable you to handle life's challenges in a positive way and avoid making choices that could have a negative impact on your life. And that negative impact is bringing disease onto yourself, doing something that costs might not cost you your life, but if you're in a car wreck and you suffer permanently bodily damage, and you lose an arm, you lose a leg, you lose something, you head goes through the windshield and it damages the operation of your brain. And you think about these things that, well, we brought this on, and I want to be careful how I say this. Sometimes if we're the one that led to the cause of the accident, we can say we brought that upon ourselves. But what about the other people that are with us that are part of the accident, that they were bystanders and we brought that upon them? Well, we can also do that by the way we conduct ourselves if we're doing negative things in front of younger people, or if we're telling people, it's kind of like the father that says, son, you should never smoke. It'll kill you. Like, wow, so what are you doing right now? Are you killing yourself? Is that what you're telling me? Think of the confusion that's put in the mind of a child, or you should never do drugs. Why? Because it's bad for business. I'm trying to sell this stuff. Don't do them. And I've heard these things. I'm not saying these things as a joke. I've actually heard these things where parents forbid their children to do drugs. Why? Because that's inventory and I'm selling it. Don't do them. It's not that they had any desire to save their life or to help them. But once again, notice here, developing self-respect is much like a muscle that grows stronger from regular exercise. And this is not like I seen here just a couple weeks ago. This young man, he decided he wanted to exercise, and 1, 2, 3. And after 3, he goes to the mirror and he's like, looks bigger. Well, no, it doesn't come that way. Not to throw anyone underneath the bus there, but it doesn't work that way. Character, just like lifting weights, you don't see the results immediately. And in character, really, other people see them before you do when you start practicing moral character. And when you don't practice moral character, other people see them before you realize it. And sometimes those things have to be pointed out to us. And those are things that if we have self-respect, we're thankful when someone shows us how we're harming ourselves or doing something negative to ourselves. But once again, it's like a muscle and it takes regular exercise. Well, how do these things take place? Our daily interactions, our daily choices. Locking yourself in a room and thinking you're going to work it out yourself is not going to help us. People try that. We do that to prisoners every day. We lock them up in a room and it's supposed to rehabilitate them. Well, we'll let you out to watch TV. Or you can come out and play Dungeons and Dragons, or you can play dominoes, or you can do this. So what about education? We don't have the funding for that. So that's where the Peaceful Solution tries to step in and offer these things. We're not asking for money, we're asking for opportunity. Just allow us to have people to teach. That's all we're asking for. And as one of the Peaceful Solution teachers likes to say, a prison is a captive audience. They're going nowhere. And we have found wardens that will actually put the Peaceful Solution on a system. And this is for anybody that's watching that might be part of a correctional facility. We've done DVDs, and we'll do them for you. We have these classes that we will put on DVDs for you, to where they actually have a television system in the prison, and they control it through the headquarters. They're the AV room of the prison system, and they can play the show for everyone to watch, or the classroom. And as the prisoners are sitting in their cell, they're actually sitting in a classroom. And we'll be more than glad to provide everything that you need to do it. You just have to put forth the effort to allow it to take place. And there are wardens that are willing to do that. And they have done it. And that's truly what society needs. When someone is released back into society, they should have been educated. Rehabilitation means that you've kind of taken what you had and you reshaped and remolded it and you made it stronger. Just like this muscle we're talking about. If you're sitting in a room all day, you're not making anything stronger. And if all you have to talk about is why you're in there and how could you do it better to not come back again, that's not helping it either, because your experiment of that takes place on society when you get out. But once again, we make it stronger. We start respecting the life to value it. So here at the very last sentence of the first paragraph. So let's say it together. It's great to be alive. Now we're going to have to say this loud enough so people that are hearing can hear this. So it's great to be alive. Everybody got that? Is it great to be awake? Yeah, I'm just joking. I know you're awake. Everybody said. I know it's cold here today, and anytime you get heat, it's easy to fall asleep. So ready? We're going to do this on 3. 1, 2, 3. It's great to be alive. You know, and it is. And no matter how bad life gets, and you think, well, who wouldn't say that? The enormous amount of people that committed suicide today. And you think about the class we're having right now is an hour long, and the statistics that we brought in our class that lasted an hour, that means 9 people committed suicide during the class here in the United States today. So that's something that's easy to say, but there's a lot of people that have never been taught this. They don't know this, and they're giving up. And you could pretty much say in the next 10 minutes, someone else is giving up, and they're going to take their own life. So these words are easy to say, and it's horrible when it affects you and your immediate family. And as we talked about before, it shouldn't be any less valuable if it occurs to someone that we never met, that you look through the obituaries and I don't know who those people are, but as soon as you see someone you know, it affects you. These things should affect us on a daily basis, no matter who they are, no matter where they live. And I can only imagine how many people have taken their life since class started on a global scale. But continuing on here on page 25, it says, when you learn how to respect yourself, you will have an even greater appreciation of the needs to respect others. The combination of respecting yourself and others, notice it will enable you. It gives you the ability, gives you the access. It's like giving you the tool. It enables you to interact in healthy, meaningful ways. In this chapter, you will learn that self-respect includes controlling your thoughts, feelings, and actions. And this is talking about toward yourself, not just toward everyone else, but also toward yourself. You can also learn that you demonstrate self-respect by the way you dress, walk, and talk. Your ability to respect yourself should be clearly seen in your every action and interaction. And of course, that makes you a person of integrity. And if we can put the slide up, remember on page 18, we went over integrity and what it means. And there at the very top, it says the end result of internalizing, that's within yourself, positive character traits that can be clearly seen in your actions and attitudes is called integrity. And whenever we work and we develop this self-control, we're actually working toward becoming a person of integrity. And we're moving that direction. And if you notice here at the very bottom, you see the lady reading the paper there on respect. And it says, I'm willing to improve myself, aiming to be my very best. And if we could go to the next slide, this is something else that I want to leave in your mind as we progress through into the next class. This is off of page 71, and this is the VIP chapter, the very important person or value, imitate, practice. And if you remember, this is a section where we're talking about developing habits, and it's called Mirror, Mirror. And it says, with so many negative influences in today's society, it can be a challenge to obtain a positive character. This is where having someone who has a moral character to imitate really helps. Imitating others is something we all do, whether we admit it or not. We all have someone we look up to and admire. As babies, you imitated your parents in how to speak, when to smile, how to eat, and so forth. You develop habits that are now second nature to you. Now, these are things we do as a baby. We learn through baby steps to develop. Now, what occurs if you're 30 years old or 40 years old or 50 years old and no one has ever taught you self-respect? Does that mean it's too late? No. Does that mean that you need to grasp it all in one night? No, we just talked about it's like a muscle, but we need to start that journey. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and we need to start moving that direction. Doesn't mean there won't be curveballs and pitfalls as we talked about before, but it means that we're going to learn from mistakes, learn from bad choices, and avoid them at all costs. And it starts with doing that with ourselves first. If we're doing something that brings harm to ourselves, we need to reevaluate that. Sometimes you might need to get with a teacher, a guidance counselor, and figure out how you can formulate a plan to get yourself out of that situation. But we're going to stop right there on that point on page 25. And of course, mirror, mirror, looking at ourselves first. And of course, not walking away and quickly forgetting what we've seen, and then start looking at everybody else's faults. No, we have to start with ourselves first, and that's where we make society better. So we're going to stop right here. Our next class will be this coming Sunday on 1/29/2023, and it will, of course, be at 5:30 p.m. Thank you once again for joining us.